In particular, I welcome the National Coordinator of the IIT Kano Office, Nigeria, Professor Salisu Shehu, and all others that have joined right away. As we are all aware, the lecture is going to be on the Muslim history and civilization, and the impetus it will serve to Muslims, or the lesson it will serve to Muslims in contemporary times. As we are aware, not many people are aware about the contribution of Islam to modern civilization, or the contribution of Muslims to the Renaissance, or to contemporary civilization. And the person who is going to serve as the facilitator is none other than Professor Isa Muhammad Maishanu, a professor of comparative religion in the Department of Islamic Studies, Usman Danfodio University, Sokoto in Nigeria, who has no less than 20 publications in areas of comparative religion, Islamic theology or Aqidah, the Quran, and women in Islam. It's my pleasure to introduce him. He is at one time a visiting professor in the Department of Philosophy, Ahmadu Bello University, Zaria, and the Department of Islamic Studies, Kaduna State University in Kaduna, Nigeria. Professor Maishanu also served or is serving as external examiner with Bayero University in Kano. He obtained his BA Honors Islamic Studies from Usman Danfodio University and MA and PhD degrees from the International Islamic University, Islamabad, Pakistan, where he obtained MA and PhD in comparative religion. He received gold medal in his PhD thesis titled The Comparative Method in the Study of Religion, a case study of Amiri and Al-Bayruni and selected modern Western approaches. He taught in that university for 12 years and headed the Department of Comparative Religion in that university before coming back to Nigeria to continue with the Usman Danfodio University. Professor Maishanu has attended a number of international conferences in many countries. He is a member of both the International Foundation of Islamic Scholars and Muslim World League, Makkah, Saudi Arabia, as well as the International Islamic Foundation for Islamic for Education, Jeddah, Saudi Arabia. He's currently the Sokoto State of Nigeria Association of Teachers, Vice Chairman of the Council of Ulama, Sokoto State Branch. Professor Maishanu is a Hafiz of the glorious Quran. That is to say, he memorized the glorious Quran and is fluent in Hausa, Arabic, and English. He is an associate with the IIT Kano office and a resource person to the IIT West Africa sub-region. Professor Maishanu is happily married with the children. With this brief introduction, which I hope will serve the purpose for those of us who are coming into contact with the professor for the first time. Even though much more can be said about him, but for want of time, it's my pleasure to introduce and welcome Professor Isa Muhammad Maishanu, who will give us the talk of the day. It's my hope that inshallah, by the time Professor Maishanu finished talking to us, we'll leave this platform more informed than we joined. Professor Maishanu, I welcome you to this platform. You are starting the lecture with 50 participants in the classroom, and more are joining by the minute. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullah. Sir, this is the host. I want you to request the speaker to place on his video, because
Okay.
It seems his video is off. Yes.
Okay. Professor Maishanu, can you please switch on your video and unmute yourself? I hope you have heard my brief introduction of your humble self. If there is any update regarding the brief which I have before me, you are free to update us. Assalamu alaikum, Professor Maishanu. Professor Isa Maishanu, can you hear me? The host has unmuted you. You have to also unmute yourself and switch on your video and start talking to the classroom. Okay, before then, my attention is drawn to the agenda that there is supposed to be a recitation of the glorious Quran from our brother Dr. Mukhtar Shuaib, who is a lecturer of the Department of Islamic Studies and Sharia, Bayero University, Kano, and a director with the IIT Kano office. Dr. Shuaib, can you please give us recitation of the glorious Quran? Perhaps that's why Professor Maishanu kept mute, because he knew I have jumped an item agenda. So please, Shuaib.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم أبلغ مجمع البحرين أو أمضي حقبا فلما بلغا مجمع بينهما نسيا حوتهما البحر سربا قال لفتاه آتنا غداءنا لقد لقينا من سفرنا هذا نصبا قال أرأيت إذ أوينا إلى الصخرة فإني نسيت الحوت وما أنسانيه إلا الشيطان أن أذكره واتخذ سبيله في البحر عجبا قال ذلك مد على آثاره فوجدا عبدا من عبادنا آتيناه رحمة من عندنا وعلمناه من لدنا علما. قال له موسى هل أتبعك على أن تعلمني مما علمت رشدا؟ قال إنك لن تستطيع معي صبرا وكيف تصبر على ما لم تحط به خبرا؟ قال ستجدني إن شاء الله صابرا ولا أعصي لك أمرا. قال فإن اتبعتني فلا تسألني عن شيء حتى أحدث لك منه ذكرا. صدق الله العظيم.
ما شاء الله. جزاكم الله خيرا كثيرا Dr. Shuaib for that beautiful recitation of the glorious Quran. It's my hope that Professor Isa Muhammad Maishanu has joined us. Has he? Professor Maishanu? Dr. Nabil?
What? I don't know why he's not speaking.
I saw him very early since the class was not more than 10 people. Professor Maishanu? Professor Salus Shehu, can you assist us by contacting Professor Maishanu through the phone?
Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum assalam.
I spoke with him about just before the Qira'ah started.
All right.
I asked him about his slides. He said he's going to just give lecture.
Okay.
And now when you've been calling him, I was trying his phone.
Okay.
It was ringing. He didn't pick.
All right.
And it appears he didn't join with his video.
Okay.
I'm still calling him, but he's not picking.
Okay, so any of the participants who has access to him, I've seen him now. Professor Isa Maishanu, and he's unmuted. Professor, are you having challenges from your end?
Prof Cook? Okay, Kafara Magana. Maybe right from the beginning, but can joining with video, but they're asking to join with video.
Mm-hmm.
So it's
Yes, ba ajinsh. We can't hear him. Yeah.
Yes, and I think he has to check the speaker to use device audio, something like that. I think he didn't do that while he was joining.
Okay, let him leave the meeting and join again, and yes, follow the procedure. Please, Professor Salus Shehu, anybody who has access to him, because I've seen some of his family members have also joined. So Anybody who has quick access to him should please guide, and let's have him on board, please.
It's not picking.
Yes, I think he may be struggling with the gadget to see that he joins us. Anyway, for those of us who join later, I can see the class has grown to 90 participants. The topic is Muslim history and civilization as source of inspiration for contemporary Muslims. And Professor Isa Maishanu is quite fitted, quite competent and relevant to talk on this topic. As an associate of the IIIT Kano office and a resource person to the West Africa sub-regional office of the IIIT, not long ago, in December 2019, he went around the centers where winter school, the annual winter school for West Africa takes place in Kano, Lagos, in Nigeria, and in Tamale in Ghana, where he gave a talk on the topic. And we are now waiting for him to also share his vast knowledge in the area with us. I'm sure this disruptive technology of postmodern times is what must be disrupting him in joining us. So I plead with the participants to exercise patience until we overcome the technical hitches and we listen to Professor Maishanu. For the benefit of those who join us later, Professor Isa Maishanu is a professor of comparative religion in the Department of Islamic Studies, Usmanu Danfodio University, Sokoto, Nigeria. He has over 20 publications in the areas of comparative religion, Islamic theology, the Quran, and women in Islam. He's a visiting professor to a couple of universities. He studied in Nigeria and Pakistan. He also taught in Pakistan before coming back to Nigeria after his PhD. He's an associate of a couple of professional bodies, including the Foundation for Education, International Islamic Foundation for Education, the International Foundation for Islamic Scholars of the Muslim League, among others. Professor Maishanu, are you set? Are you with us? And the topic, as you are all aware, is also equally important. Many people do not appreciate the contribution of Islam to modern civilization. Neither do they know the kind of interconnectivity, the journey to civilization. In other words, from the beginning of the Greek civilization to the modern, what we call Western civilization, it is a great journey which took place over the centuries and of which Islam played a central role. a bridge, so to say, between Greek civilization and Western civilization. At a point in history, I can see Professor Maishanu is battling with the gadgets. Inshallah, we will soon have him on board. So, as some of us might be aware that there was a point in history in which the Western world was in a dark age. In fact, they said the world was in a dark age, but as a matter of fact, it is the Western world that was in a dark age, because as they were in a dark age, Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam came, and Islam introduced light to the world. That the Westerner was in a dark age implies that he was disconnected with knowledge. In fact, so much so that philosophers were being killed and their books destroyed and burnt down. And now Islam came, and Muslims quickly evacuated those Greek works, kept them in safe custody, started translating them into Arabic. And by the time the Westerner emerged in the Renaissance period, the body of knowledge which the Greek philosophers bequeathed to us could only be found in the hands of Muslims, and most of them in Arabic language. So the Westerners took those works and started translating them into various European languages. And then the Muslims did not just translate Greek philosophy, but they deconstructed the philosophy, reconstructed same, injected new thoughts, and alhamdulillah, laid the foundation of modern science, of which the Westerners built on, and we arrived at where we are today in terms of civilizational journey. And it's my guess, although I didn't go through the paper by Professor Maishanu, but it's my guess it is this journey that he is going to take us through with a view to seeing what we can tap from, what modern Muslims or contemporary Muslims can tap from. So once more, the title is Muslim History and Civilization as Source of Inspiration for Contemporary Muslims. And Professor Muhammad Maishanu, Isa Muhammad Maishanu, currently the Dean Faculty of Arts and Islamic Studies and a Professor of Comparative Religion, Usman Danfodio University, seems to be set to talk to us. Am I right, Professor?
Yes, I'm all right now.
Alhamdulillah. You are welcome. But I have just finished introducing you the second time. You are starting the class with close to 100 people, and it's my pleasure to invite you. فليتفضل مشكورا.
Okay. So, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, wa salatu wa salam ala Rasulillah, wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa sallam tasliman kathira wa ba'd. Brothers and sisters all over joining us, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi ta'ala wa barakatuh. It is my pleasure to be invited to this particular occasion of this lecture entitled the History and History of Muslim History and Civilization as Source of Inspiration for Contemporary Muslims. It is in fact part of the presentations I was making during the winter schools of Triple IT in Abuja, Lagos, Accra, and Kano. And it is based on sort of a recap of what Islam is all about in terms of it as an enterprise, a religion, a civilization, and then what we Muslims especially are supposed to learn from that. I will start with Billahi Tawfiq by saying, of recent, the religion of Islam has become synonymous in some quarters with extremism, terrorism, oppression, and violence. It is no wonder that the religion is labeled today as the most feared and misunderstood. It is so much misunderstood due to the various images its modern extremist trends might present. But to the core, Islam is a religion of peace that promotes message of peace, tolerance, unity, equality, justice, and human progress in all endeavors. It can boast of a rich intellectual past and was responsible for bequeathing a civilization that stood at the forefront of almost all present human achievements. It was at one time the leading intellectual, military, and economic power of the world and was responsible for providing leaders in the fields of art, humanities, and the sciences. This, however, is not apparent when one thumbs through the pages of contemporary history books. There is very little mention of the achievements of the Prophet of Islam, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, that was instrumental to all the legacies the religion is proud of. The mention of marvelous achievements and interventions of Muslims for a good 1,000 years before the European Renaissance is missing, except in rare cases and very modestly, given the false impression that the Renaissance period began in Italy, when in fact a majority of the achievements made of later times could not have been possible without the previous contributions of the Islamic civilization. Maybe this is why we have Muslims today who have seriously been deceived by this ploy because of their ignorance of their own history. I will define some of the terms that I will use in this particular presentation. Islam here is, in this context of our discussion, has to be looked at holistically. It is the body of knowledge, commandments, prohibitions, traditions, and total guidance given to man throughout his sojourn on the planet Earth. As a student of religion and as a student of Islam and other religions, I believe it was the religion of all the prophets and messengers of Allah that featured in human history. Many verses of the Quran affirm this fact, like the verse in Surah Al-Nisa, where Allah is saying, أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم إنا أوحينا إليك ما أوحينا إلى نوح والنبيين من بعد وأوحينا إلى إبراهيم وإسماعيل وإسحاق, to the end of this verse, which is very, very clear that we have revealed unto you, just as we have revealed unto Noah, and then the other Israelite prophets, including the fathers, that is Abraham, Ishmael, Isaac, and the rest of them. So this is as far as Islam is concerned. History in this presentation is taken not from the secular approach. The secular approach is seen as a study of the past in order to understand the present so as to plan for the future with no recourse to the divine hands in what happens in his creations. It is a secular approach to events, which to us Muslims is reductionist. The Quranic approach, however, is a holistic view of the past, so as to understand the facts and causes of events in the light of infallible source of knowledge, and that is revelation, so as to learn the lessons from them in the present and take heed for the future and our eventual return to the source of life, Almighty Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It calls for deep search beyond the superficial material causes of historical events, while being fully conscious of and responsible for our existence. Civilization has two main components, generally, the external and the internal. The external component refers to the physical achievement of a people or a community or a nation, such as physical structures, buildings, sophisticated equipment, machineries and architecture, lifestyle, and etc., etc. The internal refers to the moral and ethical values, principles of engagement and interaction, or the spiritual and religious foundation that serve as the basis of that civilization. In other words, each civilization has a body and a soul. The body refers to the material achievements, say in science and technology, and such things that relate to luxurious lifestyle and sensual pleasures of worldly life. The soul aspect of a civilization deals with the set of ideologies, concepts, moral values, manners, and traditions that are embodied in the behavior of individuals, groups, and their interrelations. Islamic or Muslim civilization in this context is therefore created when people chose to live in line with Islamic ethics and Islamic principles, worldview, and have agreed to respect all it stands for. From this perspective, Islam is viewed as a religion, a way of life, a civilization, and a worldview. In the present context, again, Islamic civilization also means the total sum of brilliant guidance sent by the Lord of creation and the only object of worship as the final perfected message to entire humanity and to the end of time, and what resulted of it in this world from the time of its revelation. Thus, Islamic civilization is seen in a positive light that has some of these characteristics, distinguishing characteristics like number one, monotheism or absolute oneness of Allah. Islamic civilization is based on belief in Allah as the Alpha and Omega of everything in life. It refers man to his Creator in everything, and it believes firmly that Allah is in total control. Not only that He has created, Allah lahul khalqu wal amr. Definitely His is the creation, and His is the commandment and the control. وهو الله خالق كل شيء وهو على كل شيء وكيل. Allah is the creator of everything and He controls everything. This is far away from the Greek those who believe that man, the creation has been created and left to work on its own. So it is the belief that Allah is one, without partner in His dominion, without similitude to His essence and attributes, and that is Asma wa Sifat, and without rival in His divinity and in worship. The second characteristic or distinguishing quality of Islamic civilization is universality. Islamic civilization is a civilization with a universal dimension. It is not associated with a particular geographical region, race, or historical era. This is because the message of Islam is meant for the whole of creation, both mankind and the jinn. Just as Allah mentioned in Surah Al-A'raf, قُلْ يَا أَيُّهَا النَّاسُ إِنِّي رَسُولُ اللَّهِ إِلَيْكُمْ جَمِيعًا. Or say, O mankind, I am a messenger of Allah to all of you. That is both men and human beings and jinn. It is a religion for all people from whatever race or background they might be. That is why Islamic civilization is based on a unity which stands completely against any racial or ethnic discrimination. Such major racial and ethnic groups as the Arabs, Persians, Turks, Africans, Indians, Chinese, and Malays, in addition to numerous small units, embraced Islam and contributed to the building of Islamic civilization. Islam, so, was not opposed to learning from the earlier civilizations, as we will see, and incorporating their science, learning, and culture. Each ethnic and racial group that embraced Islam made its contribution to the one civilization of Islam which everyone belongs. Another feature of this civilization is pluralism or tolerance. Religious toleration is the highest evidence of culture in a people. Islam coexists with other religions from the very first day by allowing them full religious and cultural autonomy. Before the coming of Islam, tolerance had never been preached as an essential part of religion. From the day of Caliph Umar's visit to Jerusalem in 637 CE of the Christian era to this day, from that day, the Church of the Holy Sepulchre has always been a Christian place of worship. The Muslims never interfered with the religion of its Christian subjects. There was never anything like the Inquisition or fires of Smithfield, nor did they interfere in the internal affairs of their communities. Thus, a number of small Christian sects, considered by the larger sects heretical, which would have been inevitably exterminated if left to the tender mercies of the larger sects whose power prevailed in the Christendom, were protected and preserved until today by the power of Islam. Therefore, the tolerance within the body of Islam was and is something without parallel in history. In history, class and race and color seem altogether to be barriers. Looking at the Sokoto Caliphate, for example, reforms, one can bear witness to this state of affairs in the very tolerant nature of Sokoto as the headquarters of that reform system. Another feature is moderation. Islamic civilization is a well-balanced civilization. It insists on the equilibrium between the material and the spiritual dimensions of life. This is seen in the general attitude of the religion in its abhorrence to extremism. Many Quranic verses and traditions of the Prophet ﷺ emphasize on moderation in every aspect of life, from lifestyle to interactions, and even to devotion and worship. It equally takes care of this life and its development, as it is not oblivious of the reality of the next life. And that's what makes Islam more of a complete system, not one-eyed, that is looking only to this world. There is a balance, therefore, between the ideal and the real. Its injunctions are for all and take care of exigencies of time and situations, especially examples, the exceptions in laws and instruction that we have in whatever instruction that is given in religion. You see that there are exceptions. What are the sources of Islamic civilization? Several things and events converged and worked together to create and sustain Islamic civilization. However, the following could be regarded as its main sources. Sometimes when we talk of Islamic philosophy or Islamic civilization, there are some that try to link it to the Muslim philosophers that flourished under the influence of Greek philosophy. But our position is that Islamic philosophy emanated from the Quran as a new knowledge, a new source of knowledge, an infallible source of knowledge. And this is why we say the Quran is because it contains all things dealing with man's life and the universe. There was nothing neglected from the Quran, as Allah said, مَا فَرَّقْنَا فِي الْكِتَابِ مِنْ شَيْءٍ وَنَزَّلْنَا عَلَيْكَ الْكِتَابَ تِبْيَانًا لِكُلِّ شَيْءٍ وَهُدًى وَرَحْمَةً وَبُشْرًى لِلْمُسْلِمِينَ. That Allah has revealed a book which is an exposition, a clear exposition of everything, a guidance, a mercy, and good news for the Muslims. It serves as the major primary source of Islamic civilization. That is why it gave us a very detailed and well-articulated information about the ancient civilization of the people before us, telling us of what happened to them. It tells us there were many people in the past mightier than us and more flourishing in wealth and children, but that benefited them for nothing because of their disbelief, which we tend to just discard. This can only be applied to the people who will come after us till the day of judgment. Then the second source of Islamic civilization is the hadith, or the practical sunnah of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. The Quran, as we know, was sent as guide for all mankind and was intended by Allah to serve as a source of knowledge to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam and to lead him to that which facilitates Allah's mission that He imposed on him and revealed on him on various occasions. Sometimes it is the Prophet ﷺ who will be addressed, at other times the people in general, and various groups of people, male and female, were being addressed. It was, however, principally the Prophet ﷺ to whom the sacred word came, and he was the first to be more molded in accordance with that revelation. Therefore, the Quran is the main source of Islamic civilization, but the Prophet ﷺ's lifestyle and moral conduct are the interpretation. They are the interpretation to such Quranic message. Thus, this makes the Quran and the Hadith a very important source of moral teachings and civilization in Islam. And the Prophet ﷺ is reported to have said, "Verily, I was raised to complete the best of human conduct. إنما بعثت لأتمم مكارم أو صالح الأعمال أو مكارم الأخلاق." The other component or characteristic is, source is writings of pre-Islamic civilization. Greeks were said to be free thinkers who used reasoning to deal with problems away from divine guidance. Important centers of Greek philosophy came under the Muslim rule from the time of Sayyidina Umar bin Khattab and that of Sayyidina Uthman bin Affan radiallahu anhuma. These centers include Alexandria, Aleppo, and Jundi Shapur. Similarly, during the Umayyad and Caliphate and Abbasid Caliphate, Muslims came into contact with Greek philosophical ideologies as a result of translation of their sciences into Arabic. In the process of translating their works done by both Muslims and non-Muslims, both sponsored by the Umayyads, Muslim rulers, it was during the Abbasid period that translation received a boost in the hands of the caliphs like Abu Ja'far al-Mansur, al-Ma'mun. Ma'mun's efforts later produced eminent scientists and philosophers such as al-Kindi, al-Farabi, al-Amiri, Ibn Sina, al-Biruni, al-Mawardi, and a host of others. For this reason, their works could be regarded as original, and they also originate and they are part of the source of Islamic civilization. To understand all this, especially the value of Muslim civilization, we have to look at a very, very important aspect, and that is the issue of learning, knowledge, scholarship, and how it fared in this particular religion and way of life and civilization. With its emphasis on learning, Islam began to fill a gap that had been widening in the whole of the 7th century. The major civilizations had waned, and Europe was in its dark ages, while Islam's geographic expansion was being merged with intellectual and cultural repositioning of the whole. The Quran has provided an important stimulus to learning. In fact, the first revelation shows much emphasis on learning. As we all know, اقرأ باسم ربك الذي خلق. The Prophet ﷺ was instructed for the first time of the contact between the heavens and the earth. Not that you should establish prayer, but that you should learn. So it is a civilization of scholarship, and it is based on learning. Many verses of the Quran and ahadith of the Prophet ﷺ have instilled in Muslims the love for and the habit of seeking knowledge, unlike any community or civilization I know in this world. The word ilm or knowledge occurs more than 750 times in the Quran, and there are many, many mentions of that in the Sunnah of the Prophet. And the emphasis was so much so that it was said that the search for knowledge is incumbent, is compulsory, is a duty upon each and every Muslim. I think you cannot find something similar to this. The great importance of classical Arabic, the linguistic basis of Islam and its civilization, needs more emphasis than it has received in the West. During Europe's Middle Ages, Arabic dominated the Muslim world to the extent that, in part of my reading, that at a time you cannot be a pope unless you have the knowledge of Arabic, the Pope of the Roman Catholic. The dictionary and basics of Arabic language also serve as basis or resource for Jewish philology. From its inception, the Muslim community considered the ability to read as one of its major needs, like the instance of the captives of Badr. We all know in history, when those captives were brought to the Prophet, it was put as a condition for them that if they can teach, any one of them who can teach Muslim children to read and write, 10 of them, he will set himself by that free. And they established schools of all kinds, while in Europe, literacy was a monopoly of the clergy at that time. This was a unique society with widespread concern for knowledge and focus on literacy. Muslim scholars in the early centuries of Islam strongly believed that diligence, knowledge, and piety improved life on earth and in the hereafter. It is not that I believe because it is absurd, I believe because I cannot understand it, no. early beginning of Islam and the establishment of Muslim community. The first Muslim community was a melioristic society in that Muslims changed their way of life in response to the revelation of the Quran and the behavior of the Prophet ﷺ, just as it was an egalitarian one, where everyone is working towards the good of all. Those elements of guidance influence all areas of life. For example, the Quran emphasizes the importance of working in harmony with nature and enjoying the beauty of God's world. And that was why Islam was never having any problem with science. In fact, the Quranic verses were encouraging Muslims to. It was an open license for them. قُلْ انظُرُوا مَاذَا فِي السَّمَاوَاتِ وَالْأَرْضِ قُلْ انظُرُوا مَاذَا فِي السَّمَاوَاتِ وَالْأَرْضِ. An open invitation to study whatever is in the heavens and the earth, because as long as man can reach, because all Allah's creation and the revelation is His. It came from Him directly, preserved and protected as He promised, subhanahu wa ta'ala, and so there would never be any kind of contradiction between the creation of Allah and the laws He placed therein and what He revealed as guidance and direct communication with the human. The Quran describes the human body as a miracle that can acquire divine qualities. In short, Allah elevated the humankind. Allah said, وَلَقَدْ كَرَّمْنَا بَنِي آدَمَ وَحَمَلْنَاهُمْ فِي الْبَرِّ وَالْبَحْرِ in Surah Al-Isra. That is, we have definitely dignified the human body, the human person, and that is why even in death, man is never neglected. He is given that dignity, because that is how Allah has made, how Allah has planned and programmed things in the world. The Prophet ﷺ exemplified reason and creativity and the other teachings of the Quran, as Sayyidah Aisha was in Kana Khuluquhul Quran, that is, his qualities, his teachers are that of the Quran. If you want to know how he lived, what was his worldview, what was his character, just read the Quran and you will definitely see it. And this is how Muslims are supposed to shape themselves in line with that. He was born in Mecca, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, in 570 of the Christian era. He earned a reputation for being trustworthy in his personal and business life. And that was one of the reasons that made many thinking Muslims to attach themselves to the message he brought. Before he claimed that he is a prophet or messenger, he was termed as trustworthy. He was termed as honest and trustworthy to the extent that his credentials, it shows, were very, very clear, were very, very superb. And that is why Muslims were not having any problem with whatever he brought to them as a revelation from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Islam, the Prophet ﷺ, he was sent as a messenger and a prophet to the whole of humanity. He received the first revelation in the year 16 of the Christian era and preached to his fellow Meccans who persecuted him until his migration to the future city of Medina, which was Yathrib at that time. This event, Al-Hijrah, marked the start of the Islamic calendar and the establishment of the first Muslim community. After several wars of the Prophet ﷺ and his people conquered Mecca and established it as the center of Islam. The Prophet ﷺ's vision guided this new civilization, and jihad, or striving towards a worthy goal, was the tool to achieve that. And this is one of the words that people sometimes tend not to understand, or due to mischief, maybe, they try to give it a different connotation. Jihad simply means struggle or striving. Whatever you will do in terms of writing, in terms of lecture, in terms of anything that will further the cause of Allah, that will further the light of Allah to those who have not, to whom it has not reached. The highest form of it is that of weapons, and that is when pressed to that. And this is very clear. And the mosque of the masjid, which was the first thing he established while reaching Medina, was it served as the center of Muslim community, as center of education and governance. The Prophet ﷺ was the center of this civilization. As a center of this civilization, he was a humble and modest leader who lived normally and insisted that people, including women, be treated equally with compassion and loving care. This development was remarkable for its time, when fathers often considered the birth of a daughter to be a disgrace and frequently committed infanticide. The Prophet ﷺ stated that women could keep their maiden names upon marriage and would not be under their husband's guardianship. Men were restricted from having innumerable number of wives, and women were given the right to divorce, alimony, and child support. Women could also own and control their own properties and wealth. This development were far ahead of their time. With the expansion of Islam to all geographical directions, there was a need for common understanding in the form of law. Four scholars were the original founders of the Madhahib al-Fiqhiyya Muslim schools of law: Abu Hanifa and Nu'man, Malik bin Anas, Muhammad bin Idris al-Shafi'i, and Ahmad bin Hanbal, where Islamic law was established and came to form the foundation of that Islamic civilization. What this Imam did was to go through the primary sources, and in line with the interpretation, the application that happened up to their own time, they brought out the laws and they simplified it for us. Then Islamic world order. When Islam, after having been established in Medina, then it was taken over places. What could we learn from that? Within a century of the advent of Islam, Muslims reached North Africa and Spain in one direction, and China and Indonesia in the other, gaining impressive number of conversions and territories. First, Muslims responded to their enemies with surprising zeal, despite the fact that they were often outnumbered by more established civilizations. Also significant for the future of the Muslim world was how the peaceable communities behaved towards the Muslims. The Jews and many Christians welcomed them because of the persecution they had suffered from the Byzantines, and in their ruling, Muslims were fair, for the Prophet admonished them to deal gently with people of other faiths and nations. Muslims did not destroy the places they conquered. They were not destructive in their conquest, if you use the word. Nor put men to death or encourage perpetual enslavement of women and children. Their armies did not occupy cities but built their own tent cities and military garrisons in the vicinity, which later on became cities like Cairo. Baghdad was created for the expansion of learning, and it became the first major Muslim intellectual capital. 3 out of the 4 of the founders of Muslim scholars, founders of the schools of law in Islam, lived and worked there. It also served as capital for the Abbasids, the longest reigning dynasty in Islamic history. The Mongols, if you could remember in history, they destroyed the city and its libraries in 1258 of the Christian era, even though they were eventually conquered by the power of Islam and its natural appeal. Despite the view that Islam was spread by means of the sword, which is a misconception, maybe due to, as I say, mischief or ignorance, because of the misconception of the term jihad, which Thomas Arnold in his book, The Preaching of Islam, he addressed as one of the books, for instance, that addressed that issue. Muslims remain minorities in places they ruled for centuries, notably India. We can see what is happening now in India, where Muslims are seen as people who are not indigenous, while they were people who lived and ruled over that part of the world for over 10 centuries, or nearly 10 centuries. Spain is another example. In the overall, Muslim rulers did not disturb Jews and Christians living in their dominions. Many conversions happened more than a century after the conquest. Islam spread to Indonesia, the largest Muslim community in the world, with no battles or conquests, but via merchants and itinerant scholars. Similar is the case with sub-Saharan Africa. When Mongols overran and destroyed a significant part of the Muslim world, the same people converted to Islam voluntarily. Their descendants created great Islamic civilizations and cultures of their own such as the Mughals we know in India. Muslim civilized behavior is most evident in their treatment of Jews during their own persecution by the Christians. And some of them burned Lois, I know some of them attested to this fact. These Jews sought refuge in Muslim countries. In Spain, Muslims in many instances appointed Jews to govern their regions. In other Muslim countries, Jews retained their own communities and lived according to their own laws. They also participated in Muslim life, government, and academic institutions. Jewish scholarship in religion and philosophy achieved most of its most significant advances under Muslim rule, with most scholars clustered around the capital cities. Muslim Spain was the intellectual center of Judaism, we all know. A brief account of Muslim contribution to world civilization. Here, there are a lot of things to be said. That is, being 1100 years old, as an example, the Qarawiyyin University of Fez in Morocco is the oldest university in the world. This old tradition of Islamic learning has influenced the West greatly. In Toledo, Spain, during the 11th century, translations of Islamic works into Latin were started. These translations were often made by Jewish scholars who knew Arabic and who often wrote in Arabic. As a result of these translations, Islamic thought, and through it much of Greek thought, became known to the West. In fact, it is being said that it is the Muslims that handed over the Greek thought to the Greeks or to the Europeans. It was at this point that Western schools of learning began to flourish. Similarly, in Europe, the Islamic educational system was emulated, and to this day, when referring to the term chair in a university, professorial chair, it is referring to the Arabic kursi, that is literally seat, upon which a scholar would sit to teach his students in the Islamic school or Islamic higher institution of learning. As the European civilization continued to progress until the high Middle Ages, there was hardly a field of learning or form of art, whether it was literature or architecture, that was not influenced by Islam. In this way, Islamic learning became a part of Western civilization. However, with the advent of Renaissance, the West not only turned against its own medieval past, but also chose to forget the long relation it had had with the Islamic world, a relation that was based on intellectual respect despite religious opposition. In the following paragraphs, some of the brief accounts of Muslim contribution to the various fields of contemporary learning, such as mathematics, astronomy, and the rest of them are discussed. In astronomy, for example, the Muslim contribution to astronomy started among the Arabs during the early period of the Abbasid Caliphate. The initial study of astronomy was greatly influenced by Siddhanta, a work in Sanskrit, which I believe was translated by Al-Biruni, which was brought from India. Al-Biruni, Muhammad bin Ahmad Al-Biruni, was the link between India and the Muslim world. Other astronomical traditions from the Persians, the ancient Near East, and especially the Greeks, were also integrated into a synthesis which began to chart a new chapter in the history of astronomy from the 8th century onwards. The Al-Majaz is the Latin form of the Arabic name of Kitab al-Majisti, which refers to the great book of mathematical and astronomical treatise proposing the complex motion of stars and planetary paths. This book was written in Greek by Ptolemy of Alexandria, Egypt, and was later thoroughly studied and criticized by several astronomers of both the eastern and western lands of Islam. What the Muslim philosophers did was to receive what the Greeks have written, study it, and criticize it, and improve upon it. And then in an improved form, they pass it on to the world. The Muslims also observed the heavens carefully and discovered many new stars. Abdurrahman as-Sufi's book on stars was translated into Spanish by Alfonso X and the rest of this. In the field of astronomical observatory, the Muslims were in fact the first to create an observatory as a scientific institution. The observatory of Maraga in Fascia was established by Astuti. This indirectly served as a model for later European observatories. Talking about Abu Rayhan, Muhammad bin Ahmad al-Biruni, he was considered as one of the greatest scholars in the Middle East, in the Middle Ages. In fact, George Sarton, in his History of Science, he said in the year 1040 of the Christian era, he was the most cosmopolitan scholar on earth, the most learned on the surface of the earth. On the basis of his knowledge of Islamic civilization, Islamic literature, that of the Greeks, added to that, he had very good knowledge of the Indians and their sciences. So by that, he surpassed all others. He was a polymath and had great intellectual achievement to his credit. These are very, very surprising. For example, accurate determination of latitude and longitude of large number of places, which is exactly being confirmed today. Trisection of an angle and the solution of some complex problems without the use of protractors and scale was done by him, pointing to the existence of the American continent as far back as that 1040, 1050. Theorizing that the Sindh Valley was once underwater, but later changed into dry land following some geographic changes, explaining the flow of springs, determining the specific gravity of 18 precious stones and metals correctly. Provided he correctly calculated the circumference of the earth, and many other of these things, like explaining the universal law of nature that flowers have always 3, 4, 5, 6, 8 petals, and never 7 or 9. They can never be 7 or 9. Then determination of the circumference and diameter of the earth by using spherical trigonometry and the rest of this. In mathematics, the first great Muslim mathematician Al-Khwarizmi, who lived in the 9th century, wrote a treatise on arithmetic, whose Latin translation brought what is known as Arabic numerals to the West. To this day, Gorismo was derived from his name, means figure or digit in Spanish, with algorithm that is still used in English. Al-Khwarizmi is also the author of the first book on algebra. This science was developed by Muslims on the basis of the earlier Greek and Indian works of a rudimentary nature. The very name algebra comes from the first part of the name of the book of Khwarizmi, Kitab al-Jabr. Kitab al-Jabr wal-Muqabala, and the rest of this. The style of numerals used in the numbering system used around the world is of Arabic origin. They first appeared in print in the work of Muslim mathematicians and the rest of them. Let me move to physics. Muslims made contribution to the field of physics in 3 areas. The first of which was being the contribution made towards determining the measurement of specific weights of objects, and to the study of balance following the work of Archimedes. In this domain, the writings of Al-Biruni and Al-Khazini stood out. The second contribution was the critique of the Aristotelian theory of projectile motion and the attempt to quantify this type of motion. The critique of Ibn Sina, Abul Barakat, Al-Baghdadi, and the rest of them. The third contribution was made to the field of optics in Ibn Haytham Al-Hazan of the 11th century, who is considered the greatest student of optics between Ptolemy. Work on optics, the Kitab al-Manazir, was renowned in the West as the Sasaros Opticals. And the rest of all this, there are many of them. Medical sciences, because of the great attention paid in Islam to the need to take care of the body and to personal hygiene, Muslims began early on to cultivate the field of medicine. Initially, they turned to the knowledge available from Greek, Persian, and Indian sources. At the beginning, great physicians among Muslims were mostly Christians. However, by the 9th century, Islamic medicine flourished by bringing forth the collections of razi, anatomy, smallpox, antiseptic, and psychomatic medicine. Then Ali ibn Rabban al-Tabari, the author of the Paradise of Wisdom, synthesized the Hippocratic and Galenic traditions of medicine with those of India and Persia. His student Muhammad ibn Zakaria al-Razi was one of the greatest physicians who emphasized clinical medicine and observation. Al-Razi was the first to identify and treat smallpox to use alcohol as an antiseptic and made medical use of mercury as a purgative. Muslim physician Ibn Sina is well known and he is considered the greatest of all Muslim physicians. His Qanun al-Qanun fi Tibb, the canon of medicine, remained for many centuries being the source book in medicine in the world. After Ibn Sina's work was divided into several branches, Egypt remained the major center for the study of medicine, especially in the field of ophthalmology, which reached its peak at the court of Al-Hakim. There are many of these areas in pharmacology, in botany and zoology. Muslim scientists made considerable progress in the field of botany during the 12th century in Spain. During this time, the most important dissertations were written, such as the work of Cordovan physician Al-Ghazali, who was a renowned botanist.
Professor, may I remind you of the time? I think it's I want to remind you of the time. I think it's time to round up based on the agenda.
Okay, how much time is left for me?
Well, you are already over time. I just allowed you because of the late start of the talk.
No?
Because you started talk late, so I allowed you some 7 minutes ready. So if you can round up in the next 3 to 5 minutes, it will be good.
Is it clear? Can you hear me?
Yes, very well.
Okay, so what is left of the time now?
It's now 12:07 when you were supposed to have stopped at 12 noon.
No? Yes. Okay, can I continue?
Yes, you can round up.
I can down the...
Yes, for the next, maybe next 5 minutes. We can loan you 5 minutes from the discussion time.
Okay, maybe something is reverberating, eh? Is it okay now?
Okay, go ahead.
Okay, can I go ahead?
Yes, please.
Okay, it's all right. I will try to skip many things because of the time factor. The airplane and parachute, for example, 1,000 years before the Wright brothers, a Muslim poet, astronomer, musician, and engineer, Abbas ibn Firnas, made several attempts to construct a flying machine. In 852, he jumped from the minaret of the Grand Mosque in Cordoba using a loose cloth stiffened with cotton straps, just to try flying. Then the concept of the camera, soap and shampoo, we have Muslim contribution, the bank check, and so on. So I'm just trying to round up on the basis of there are so many of these things are already and written in several books. But how do these achievements serve as inspiration to Muslims of today? Can I continue? Hello? Am I on?
Yes, sir, you can continue, please.
Okay, I can continue, eh?
Please continue.
Okay. I'm coming to the...
You have just about 3 to 5 minutes.
Hello?
I said you have about 3 to 5 minutes to...
It's all right, I'm continuing to round up. As I said, with all what we have heard, and there are many other things to be said, but due to the time factor, and we know all these things, they have been amply recorded in many books. How do their achievements, that is the achievements of early Muslims, How do they serve as inspiration to Muslims of today? What made the early Muslims unique in making all these achievements in a comparatively very short period of time? If we are to look critically and compare their lives with ours, we can come out with issues and suggestions that could serve as inspirational and instructive to the contemporary Muslim communities. The Islamic or Muslim civilization was based on new knowledge and a new line of thinking entirely different from what obtains at the time of its inception. That is, that new knowledge is the revelation which was hitherto unknown. So it shaped their thinking, their life, their direction and everything. And a new body of ideas, instructions, and aspirations of changing for the better. Changing for the better, all these were the hallmark of the mission of the Prophet of Islam, sallallahu alaihi wasallam. This is why revivalism is imperative. I'm using the word revivalism. That is when the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam came, he made people living in a different way of life, a different milieu, and so on and so forth. But he has to revive them all anew. The same thing we knew of the different prophets and messengers of Allah that were sent, and the same concept of revivalism is what we knew after the Prophet has gone, sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So that's why I think this concept is very, very key to what I'm saying. Revivalism is imperative. It is the sunnah of Allah that we could discern throughout human history. A messenger is sent to revive the people, their faith, their commitment, their knowledge, and their perception. When that is done, a new people or a new ummah evolves. And this is what we are talking of. After the prophets and messengers have gone, the strategy continues with the divine promise as explained by the Prophet in a hadith of Imam Abu Dawood, that at the beginning of every century Allah will raise for this ummah someone who will revive for its religion. What does a revivalist do? The early Muslims achieved what they achieved due to their commitment to the cause of Allah. So he will try to create that commitment. Their strong conviction of being instruments of change to be used by Allah, being led by the messenger or by the revivalist. With the help of his Lord, that is, with the help of Allah, and which he promised the believers. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, "Inna lanansuru rusulana walladhina amanu fil hayati yawma yaqumul ashhad." That is, the help of Allah is always with the prophets and the messengers and with the believers in this world and in the life to come. So whenever a people are ready now to revive themselves, to change their commitment, their thinking and everything, in line with the pristine teachings of Islam, under a very able leadership, then they will change for the better. So in conclusion is also explaining these things. The intellectual bent of Islamic civilization made it a leading enterprise of its golden age. When Muslims adhered to the principles of success as outlined in the revealed guidance and committed their faith, they offered the best for humanity. The endless list of their achievements, as we have seen, are supposed to inspire our young ones with the required zeal, knowledge, ambition, and commitment and resilience for the overall development of the earth. The history of the Ummah and the marvelous principles of its civilization are available. What is needed is concerted effort by all to bring out such treasures into living realities by imbibing them under conscious leadership.
Subhanallah.
Assalamu alaikum. Dr. Dukawa, it seems Professor is having problem with his connection.
Yes. Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum assalam, sir.
Yes, I can see he has left. I'm hoping he will soon join us back. So perhaps I can quickly recap what Professor Isa Maishanu has told us before he joins back. He has taken us through the journey of history and civilization. He has told us about what history is and the distinction between history in the Western perspective and in the Islamic perspective. In the Western perspective, history is about telling something that has happened, a story of something which happened. Whereas in Islamic perspective, history is telling something, or rather telling about something before it happens, while it is happening, and after it has happened. So he then distinguished between the Western civilization and the Islamic civilization, and the principal character of Islamic civilization, which distinguishes it with all other civilizations. That is to say, a civilization based on knowledge and faith, which sometimes Westerners call wisdom. When a Westerner talks, he can say one has to combine knowledge with wisdom. But Islamic faith is much more than wisdom. It is both wisdom plus belief plus ethics plus best conduct in human behavior. And also, the professor dwelled on the centrality of the Quran to the Islamic civilization, as well as the exemplary character of the Prophet of Islam, sallallahu alaihi wasallam. He talked about some of the revolutions brought about by Islam, like uplifting the status of women folk, tolerance of the other, preference for peace over violence, among other things. He also dwelt on the contributions of Muslims to modern world. He's now telling us about the inspirations present-day Muslims can derive from this history of Islamic civilization, of which central to the idea is what he termed revivalism. Before we lost him. I hope he has joined us back. Prof, are you back? Prof Maishanu, are you back? Assalamu alaikum. Hasbunallahu wa ni'mal wakil. In that case, if he is listening to us, only that he is unable to join. I don't know whether we...
I'm waiting for him to join. I've already unmuted him.
Okay. Professor Maishanu, are you back?
Yes, I can hear you.
Afwan, ina kan meeting.
Yes, I'm back.
Zoom. Na ɗauka ma 'yan meeting ɗin ne suke kira, shi yasa na daga.
Assalamu alaikum, Mr. Speaker. Please go ahead. You can continue speaking. The moderator is on a phone call.
agenda. So we see. I think, if I'm not mistaken, we are supposed to have questions and answers, and that can only be relevant if the speaker is on. So I don't know whether we should jump that aspect and move to and start inviting some of the triple IT leadership that I have seen on board, both in Nigeria and Ghana. Yes, yes, I can see from 12, by 12:20, we are supposed to be listening to the speaker responding to questions. And we have not yet taken the questions because he is offline. And after that, it's supposed to be a vote of thanks from Professor Salis Show. But before the vote of thanks, and in place of the questions, maybe I will invite Professor Salis Shehu to say a word or two to see whether Professor Maishanu can join us before then. Otherwise, I may allow people to ask questions and then maybe Professor Salis Shehu answers for them, or Brother Imam Said from Ghana. So Professor Salis Shehu, host, please unmute him.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah.
Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullah. You are welcome, sir.
I just wrote on the chat that let us just round up, please. Because, you know, we told people that this is going to be a 1-hour program. We started late. It is already 12:20. I think we better just round up. What do you think? Let me just go ahead and give the vote of thanks. Assalamu alaikum.
I think
now, Prof, it's just now that the host has unmuted me. Well, if you think so, Prof, because we still have, I think, up to 7 minutes. If you have a word or two to say, or if you feel like inviting any of the triple IT crew members, okay. Professor Maishanu has joined back. Hello. Assalamu alaikum. Host, check the control of the muting and unmuting, please. It's like many people are muted. Assalamu alaikum, Professor Maishanu. Professor Salis Show, can you continue?
Actually, Professor Maishanu is not with us. Yes.
Okay, then allow Professor Salis Show to continue. Let him proceed.
Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum assalam.
Please, I just want to request, there is Ambassador Abdul Wahab from New York City who wants to contribute. Please give him the opportunity.
MashaAllah.
From United States, yes. Unmute him and give him the opportunity to contribute. Ambassador Abdul Samad Abdul Wahab, or Abdul Salam Abdul Wahab. Have you seen him?
Please name, sir, again. The name, sir.
Ambassador somebody Abdul Wahab. There is ambassador in the name.
Abdul Wahab. There is no Abdul Wahab, sir.
Ambassador. There is ambassador in the name.
Okay. Ambassador is not here.
It's Ambassador Saleh Abdul Wahab. Ambassador Saleh Abdul Wahab.
Saleh.
He has left?
Actually, he has left, sir.
Maybe he joined without his identity. Well,
Yes,
perhaps.
we need to know.
No, that is the name appearing on. That is the name appearing on his. That is the name appearing on his video.
I too cannot see that name.
Okay, he must have left then.
Probably.
There is one UF Umar. There is one UF Umar who wants to speak. Allow US Umar. Otherwise, we should give. Excuse me. I can see Honorable Aisha Duku. Hello. I can see Honorable Aisha Duku, former State Minister of Education, and member of the House of Reps.
Yes, I can see her.
Honorable Aisha Duku.
Yes, she's there.
Please give her opportunity to say a word for us.
Okay.
Ajia Aisha. Hajia Aisha Duku.
Yes, I'm still waiting for her.
Have you unmuted her?
Yes.
Okay, in her absence, you can give Imam Saeed Mukhtar from Ghana. Imam Saeed Mukhtar from Ghana.
I'm available.
Okay, she's online.
Oh, it's like
Yes,
she's on, okay? All right.
Sir.
Honorable.
Assalamu alaikum. Yes, sir.
Wa alaikum assalam.
I would like to thank the professor for the presentation. I'm highly pleased talking about Islamic culture, which is also the foundation for the propagation of Islam. And I want to ask the professor, how would you link the Islamic culture to the Al-Majri issue as it is today? I believe there is a correlation, and also believe that the Al-Majri system has something to do with the Islamic culture, since the word Al-Majri comes from Muhajirun, and being a word that has transformed a long while through to the culture of the House of Fulanis now. I would like the professor to please answer this question, because so many people think that the Al-Majri system of education is just a modern innovation that is corrupting the education system now. Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Member. Although the question is a very good one, but I don't think time will allow to do it justice within this limit of time. We have 2 more minutes, which just for the sake of a vote of thanks. But I don't know, Professor has already called on Saeed Mukhtar, or I don't know. Professor, are you still allowing Imam Saeed?
Yeah. If the presenter is around, let him respond to the question.
Okay. I don't think so. I don't think he is with us. Professor Maishanu, are we together?
I think he has been having problem.
That's another
what we will do, I would just like to respond to the question in a sentence.
Okay, quickly.
I would like to tell Honorable and all listeners that the study of the Quran, the tradition of studying the Quran began with Islam. The Prophet ﷺ started teaching the Quran to his companions, and then the companions taught it to their disciples and their children, and since then the tradition continued up to the present time. And then wherever Islam is established, it goes together with the teaching of the Quran, because you cannot observe any of the Islamic rites without the Quran, most especially Salat. That is why every Muslim child must be taught the Quran. Now, in those days, when the Muslim community and the Islamic State were supporting the system, children didn't have to go out begging in order to study the Quran. But when the Muslim community abandoned that responsibility, parents also abdicated their responsibility. Now the Muslim children came to be forced to be begging in order to survive, in order to study the Quran. Over time, people that are ignorant of the system began to think that begging and the study of the Quran are intertwined, and they are not separable, that they cannot be separated. That if you have to study the Quran, you have to beg. But then that is erroneous. Begging is something different. Studying the Quran is another thing different. And even today, if the Muslim community, the Muslim Ummah will rise up to its responsibility, if parents will also rise up to their responsibility, and if Muslim governments will also support the system, the study of the Quran can continue in a better way without children having to go out to beg. But as long as we keep on abandoning the system, then children will continue to be begging, and that is an eyesore, and it tarnishes the image of Islam and the Muslim community. Wallahu ta'ala alam, wa salamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Thank you. Then proceed with the vote of thanks, please.
Now?
Proceed with the vote of thanks.
Okay, I would like to first of all thank the speaker who took his time to make this wonderful presentation. And I'm glad it is a written piece. We're going to share it to all the participants who have registered their email with us. Inshallah, we'll send the paper to their emails. I would like to thank you, the moderator, and to thank all the participants that have been patient with us. Initially, there was some hitches, but later it went on smoothly. So we all thank you for your time. Remember that we are going to keep on updating you on our series of lectures on Zoom, inshallah tabaraka wa ta'ala. We even have one today in the evening at 5 p.m. on critical thinking in the Quran. And then next week on Thursday, 4:30, we're going to have another lecture, a continuation of the Sokoto Caliphate lecture series. Inshallah tabaraka wa ta'ala, we'll disseminate the information across all the media available. And I would like to thank Dr. Nabil in particular and Mustafa Awalu and Dr. Shaib Mukhtar Shaib for their, their efforts at making sure that these Zoom lectures are successful. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Subhanaka Allahumma wa bihamdik, nashhadu an la ilaha illa anta, nastaghfiruka wa natubu ilayk. Assalamu alaikum. The host is free to end the meeting.